This is the new Ferrari 12Cilindri, or in English, the 12-cylinder, and it's a simple name for a very special car. This has a starting price of just under $500,000. It has 820 horsepower, and there's a lot more to cover too. This is the latest new Ferrari. It has just arrived in the United States, and today I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car. All right, time for the quirks and features of the new Ferrari 12Cilindri. And first, a serious thank you to my friends at Ferrari of San Diego who lent me this car to borrow for this review. Ferrari of San Diego is obviously my local Ferrari dealership here in San Diego. It's a great group of people, sales and service. They got all the cool stuff, including one of the very first 12Cilindri models here in the United States. You can check out Ferrari of San Diego, the link in the description below, and I sincerely appreciate their help checking out this car. So let's talk 12-cylinder. This car is the latest in a long lineage of Ferrari V12 two-seat sports cars that goes all the way back to the Daytona in the 1960s, and even before that with some of the 250 and 275 models going into the 50s. This car is the newest version of this long line, and it's a special surprise because a lot of people thought that the previous model, the Ferrari 812, was going to be the last to have a naturally aspirated old school V12. Most people thought that car was the end of the line and the new one would have a hybrid V8 or some sort of plug-in small V12, but not the old school real thing. And then Ferrari surprised us all with the 12Cilindri and its naturally aspirated V12. And the 12Cilindri doesn't just have a V12, it has the V12, the Ferrari F140 V12, which debuted more than 20 years ago in the Ferrari Enzo, and which has been used in basically all V12 Ferrari models ever since, including in this car's predecessor, the 812. Now, in the Enzo, this engine had 6 liters and made about 620 horsepower, but over the years, it's been massaged and updated and improved and enlarged, and it now has 6.5 liters and about 820 horsepower. A massive figure, a massive engine, seriously powerful and special, the famous F140 V12. Now, as you can see, this engine is massively beautiful. It is very cool just how special and exciting it looks, and it's also neat to see where it's mounted in the car. It's front-engined, obviously, but the engine isn't strictly in the front, hanging out over the wheels. Instead, it's pushed as far back as possible, which obviously helps with weight distribution. You can see this basically becomes a mid-engine car since the bulk of the engine is behind the front axle, which really contributes to a more balanced driving experience. Now, as for transmission, the 812 had a 7-speed dual-clutch auto. That's gone. The 12-cylinder, this car uses a new 8-speed dual-clutch auto, 1 extra gear, presumably for better acceleration, and it's still rear-wheel drive. With 820 naturally aspirated horsepower, they still haven't made the switch to all-wheel drive, which honestly is commendable. Performance numbers are crazy. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, a top speed of more than 210 miles an hour, pretty amazing, and it's offered as a coupe or a convertible. This is the coupe model, but you can get a drop top if you want one. By the way, in terms of weight, this this car is definitely heavier than the 812 that it replaces. Ferrari says by about 150 pounds. I figure a curb weight of around 3,700 pounds for this car. It's not particularly light, but with 820 horsepower, I suspect it'll do just fine balancing that out. But anyway, let's talk quirks and features, starting with the design, which has been a bit controversial actually. The overall styling, the look is beautiful. The profile of this car is absolutely fantastically gorgeous, and basically nobody is arguing with that. The general look with the long hood, the sort of rising body lines, the hip in the rear over the wheel, it is a fantastic looking car in general as a whole, a beautiful profile, a gorgeous design like so many Ferrari models are. However, there are some rather interesting details that some have questioned on the outside of this car. Two in particular are notable. One, the body sort of goes over the rear top of the car, as you can see, and splits up these two large black panels. You got one in back, and then you got one over the passenger compartment. And the body and the paint continue over in between those two panels, and it makes kind of an arrow shape, sort of pointing forward, the direction of the car is going to go, in the center of the car. It's unusual. The black panels are a little unusual. The body kind of going over the car in the middle is a little bit unusual. It's sort of a strange design element. Another unusual element in this car is up front, where you can see you got the headlights, and then the panel joining between the headlights is not painted in the body color. This is definitely weird, but it's a throwback, a tribute to the Ferrari Daytona of the 1960s. The 12Cilindri actually has a lot of kind of Daytona look to it, and that front clip being different colored is the most obvious throwback to the Daytona, the most specific callback, in addition to the car's overall profile and shape. Another rather unusual design element is this car has no real fenders. Instead, you have just one massive hood panel, one big thing that goes over the entire front of the car, including over the front wheels, so it's not broken up by anything, this big overall hood. So, some unusual elements in an otherwise beautiful car, but I have to say, looking at it here, I absolutely love it. I think it's cool. I love how the rear goes over the middle. I think the front thing is a neat tribute to the Daytona, although it's weird if you don't know about that tribute, but I think in general, I really like how this car looks. I think they nailed it. I think it's more beautiful and distinctive than the 812, but of course, styling is subjective. You can have your opinion. That's mine. As for other little quirks on the outside of this car, one very pronounced one that you notice when you spend time around it is the lighting. It's all very thin horizontal light strips. You can see up front, the running light is this very thin horizontal strip on both sides. Put on the turn signal, it takes the place of the running light, so it's also a thin horizontal strip. Same deal in back. You can see the tail lights, these little thin strips, as opposed to the old school Ferrari circle lights. Those are gone. You just get these tiny LED strips instead. It's definitely distinctive and a little bit unusual. Also unusual, on the side of the car, the front fender area, you can see there's this little hole, which I guess is for aerodynamics. It actually channels air from the tire area down to the side of the car. It's a distinctive design element. I'm sure it's functional. It does look cool, but it's also kind of curious and unusual. Also unusual in this car is the door handles and the way they work. Designers hate door handles because they break up the look of the car on the side. They're never great. Ferrari has done their best over the years to try and hide them, and here's their latest attempt. You can see the door handles are flat and body colored, and so they don't really break up the look of the car. If you want to open the door, you push your hand into the door handle, and then you can open it up and pull it out and climb in. It's definitely an interesting way to do the door handle, but they're trying to make it as non-interrupting to the design as they possibly can. And our last design element worth noting, on the back of this car, a massive carbon fiber rear diffuser, which just looks cool. It gives this car kind of a race car element, and it hides the massive quad exhaust, which of course, in this naturally aspirated V12, they sound amazing. Let's take a listen to a couple of 12-cylinder revs. our last interesting item before we climb inside, the key, which is very distinctive and pretty cool. On one side, it's just the Ferrari logo, the rectangular Ferrari logo that you've seen for years. That's half of the key. Now you flip the key over, and that's the actual functional part, and it's pretty cool. It's this like leather piece that has stitching surrounding. It says 12Cilindri on the bottom, and then you have your lock and unlock buttons, although they're not really buttons, they're just sort of embossed spots where you press. Honestly, it all looks like a pretty high-class affair, and there's no loop on this key, so you can put it on a key ring. You don't put your Ferrari key with anything. You carry it separate because it is special. And next up, we move inside the 12Cilindri, where the interior is quite impressive. It is filled with beautiful materials. You can see gorgeous leather on the seats and a cool design, nice stitching, and then you move on to the dashboard and you can see a lot of crazy angles and swoops and lines, and a big theme in here is screens, which I will get to in a second and I'll show you everything. But we start with maybe the most interesting screen of all. The engine start stop button is not a button, but instead a button screen on the bottom center of the steering wheel. You tap on this and the engine turns on. It's a far cry from the old days of twisting a key. Now we press a screen to turn on the engine. And the first screen to discuss is the steering wheel itself. When you turn on the car, the steering wheel lights up with all of its possible buttons and controls. You can see, for instance, this red switch is your drive mode, and it doesn't actually have any effect until the car is on, but then you can switch it between your various drive modes, as you can see, that are illuminated in this steering wheel screen. Same deal with other steering wheel controls. You can see on the upper spokes of the steering wheel, again, you have these like screen buttons that control various things, which I'll show you in a bit, especially the one on the right. The one on the left controls like your phone if you want to make a phone call, or your cruise control settings. But again, none of that stuff really lights up until you turn on the car, and then you can see all of your steering wheel controls fully displayed. Now, beyond just the screens on the steering wheel, you still have some physical buttons. Over on the right, you have your windshield wiper control mounted on the steering wheel in this car. And on the left, you have your headlight controls, again, mounted on the steering wheel. And also on the steering wheel are your turn signals. You can see these switches here, left and right. Those are your turn signals. You don't have a traditional stalk in this car, just signals, and you can push them from the front or kind of tap them down from the back of the steering wheel, which makes them especially convenient. But basically everything you need, wipers, lights, signals, all your drive modes, it's all here on the steering wheel, which is intentional. Ferrari wanted to obviously make it within easy reach of a driver driving the car at high speed, so you don't have to look around for some button in the center. Instead, everything is literally at your fingertips and easy to change or control. Now, before I get into the weird quirks of all of the screens in this car, let's talk about all of the other weird quirks, starting with the door handles to get out. This car doesn't have them. Instead, you want to get out of the 12-cylinder, you press this little button that shows a door open, and it will electronically pop the door open, and then you can push it open the rest of the way and climb out. No traditional door handles. Also unusual in here, you look up and you can see a glass roof, like a sunroof. It doesn't open, because if you want an opening roof, they want you to spend more money and buy the convertible. But you do have a glass roof above you. It's not standard, it's optional, but it's nice to have, adds a little more light to the interior. And speaking of the ceiling, the controls for the interior lighting are rather interesting. You can see in this panel here, you have some little circles and then some little half circles. If you tap on the half circle, it turns on your individual reading light, driver and passenger side. If you tap on the full circle, it turns on sort of the full interior lighting for both sides at once. Kind of a curious control setting, but that's how they have it going. Probably the most interesting or unusual detail in this interior is the fake gated shifter in the center. You can see this panel here looks like an old school Ferrari gated manual transmission, which always used to be in Ferraris back in the day. It had individual gates where the gear lever would go into, and it was a very special kind of treat of old Ferraris. They don't do gated manuals anymore, but they brought back the concept of it, sort of a retro look for these set of switches in the center. And they have a few functions. The one on the left will put the car into reverse. In the center, you have A at the top and M at the bottom. That stands for automatic or manual, depending on whether you want to be an automatic or manual shifting. And then at the upper right, you have one marked P PS, which stands for power start. That's sort of like a launch control for this car. Now, interestingly, at the bottom right, there's nothing. This has no function, but it's required to be there in order to mimic the look of the old school gated manual, which is kind of interesting. The other thing I love about this switch controller is that when you actually go into any of these modes, a light pulse sort of goes in the direction that you've just pressed. So towards A or towards M or towards reverse, this little pulse of light, which adds kind of some interesting and unusual character to this control area. Now, also in this vicinity, you can see the power window switches. They're here in the middle, sort of hidden down, kind of interestingly placed, which is sort of cool. You also have this little rectangular cutout in the center. That is for your key. I mentioned earlier it doesn't have a loop, so you can't stick it on a key ring. Instead, if you want to drive the car and you don't have a place to put the key, you can stick it in here so it just stays put in the very middle, and you can just look at your Ferrari logo on your key while you're driving around. Also up here, you have a cup holder, surprisingly enough, one single cup holder in the center, and ahead of that you have a wireless phone charger. It's sort of hidden under the dashboard, but it's there to charge your phone. Now, there's more storage in this interior than you might expect. You have a fairly sizable glove box. You can open it up by pressing this open button. You push that and it pops open, and of course you can store stuff there. And you have decent cargo space behind the seats. You have this like shelf where you can put cargo if you want for extra storage directly behind you. So there's pretty good storage in here. But next, let's go back to the screens. And we start with the gauge cluster screen, which is very large. And obviously that's the one that the driver is looking at when you're driving along. Now, this screen allows you to do basically everything. In previous Ferrari models, this was the only screen, and the driver controlled all of the music, the phone, everything from the driver's screen. They've changed that, and there's other screens here now, but the concept remains the same. You can adjust, for instance, the music you're listening to on this screen. You can adjust all of your vehicle settings in here. You can make a call or take a call or whatever you want. It's all done through this driver screen and through the controls on the steering wheel, as you can see. And if you find the general gauge cluster screen to be a bit busy with your vehicle information over on the left and your tachometer in the center and then this configurable screen over on the right, it's a lot of stuff. And if you want to just focus on one thing, you can do that. You tap this View Max icon on the steering wheel, another one of those steering wheel button screens. You tap that, and then you get a blown up view that you can just look at one thing at a time. So for instance, your performance or your map, you can see that directly as the main and only portion of the screen, which kind of cuts down on all the screen busyness in there. But there's not much you can do about the screen busyness in the interior in general. Next, we move on to the passenger screen. The passenger gets their own touchscreen, as you can see, mounted here on the dashboard, and it has several different functions. This is sort of the home screen where you can choose various things. Audio is one of those options, and so the passenger has access to audio controls right here where they can change what you're listening to and, of course, adjust the volume, kind of do all your audio controlling on this passenger screen. You can also adjust your seats here. You can't actually move them forward or backwards. That's done with the normal seat controls on the side of the seat. But if you want to change like the bolstering or the lumbar support or the thigh support, all your minor seat adjustments and movements are done through this passenger screen. And you can do one other cool thing with this screen. You can watch the vehicle performance as the car drives along. So if you want to see tachometer, speed, all that stuff, you look in the screen and you see it displayed in real time, so you don't have to lean over to the driver's screen to see it. It's right there displayed for the passenger. And then we have the final screen, the center touch screen, which in most cars would be the main infotainment system, although here its functions are surprisingly limited. Now, the previous 12-cylinder model, the 812, that didn't even bother with a center screen. Like I said, the driver gauge cluster screen had all the stuff, and in the middle, you basically only had your physical climate controls. Here, we do have a center screen, but once again, its functionality is primarily limited to your climate controls, and honestly, it's not really the easiest thing to operate. You can see the screen in its home position. The climate controls are along the sides, and they're a little bit clunky. For instance, if the system is off and you change the temperature, you turn it on automatically, which makes sense, but you can't turn it off again with the quick controls. You actually have to go into the climate menu and manually drop the fan speed until it's off. Same Same deal with this control to switch from manual climate control to auto. If you turn it on auto, you cannot turn it back off using the quick controls. Once again, you got to go into the climate menu and then turn it off. It's really kind of a clunky system. It works okay, but it requires more button pushing and tapping than you'd want, and I'm not entirely sure it's actually an improvement over the physical controls they had before. Now, this screen does have a couple of other features. One nice one is an easy access to an axle lift. You tap right here and the axle lifter turns on and lifts up the front end of the car so you can clear sort of steep driveways and lower curbs. That's a nice feature to have, just easily accessible with a press instead of going into some menu to find it, and it's nice to see. This screen also allows you to control stereo and audio functions, but in kind of a weird way. When you have it on the audio area, you can see the actual stereo part only displays in kind of a corner of the screen. Even though it could take up the whole screen, it doesn't really. This is where you switch between AM, FM, your media player, whatever. You can change track here and volume, but it's all kind of confined to a small corner of this screen, which is unusual. Now, with that said, keep in mind, the passenger has their own audio controls in their screen, and so does the driver in the driver's screen, and there's even a quick control for volume on the back of the steering wheel on the left side, and a quick control for next track on the back of the steering wheel on the right side. So it's all pretty easy to adjust without using the center screen. And finally, our last screen-related item in this interior. To the left of the steering wheel, you have your controls for the headlights and the mirrors, also on one of those button screens. And it's kind of unusual. To control the mirrors, you tap on it to highlight the mirror you want to control and then move up or down with this little pad. None of this is physical controls. Again, it's just sort of a button screen pad to move around the mirrors, and it's kind of interesting to check it out how they've done this. Now, one thing I like about this button control area over here to the left, there is a button screen you can tap that will instantly bring up your vehicle camera system, which comes up in the driver gauge cluster screen. And it's a pretty good camera. There's even a top-down 360 cam, and you can use your steering wheel controls to zoom in on like the left, right, back, or forward cameras. It's all pretty nice, and it's nice to have a quick button to pull up the camera system, especially in a car this expensive. You don't want to risk like scraping something or bumping into something, so having easy access to a high-quality camera system makes it pretty easy to drive it around relative to sort of just guessing. And finally, we move on to the cargo area, where, interestingly enough, the 12Cilindri is a hatchback, although that's actually not that surprising because its predecessors, the F12 and the A12, were also both hatchbacks, but this one is too. Now, when you open up the tailgate, you can see on the base there's a little rubber button. That's the one you press to open the tailgate automatically. Pretty simple. But on the other side, there's a little circle panel there. That is where you attach the battery tender for this car. In case you're not driving it for a while, you want to plug it in so that you can keep the battery fresh. You don't actually have to plug it. It's just a magnet. You stick it in there and it works wonderfully. But open up the tailgate, you get to the cargo area, and you can see it's actually reasonably sized back here. You get pretty big space in the back, and that was always kind of the point of the V12 sports cars. Unlike the mid-engine cars like the 430 and the 458, the V12s were always supposed to be a little bit more about grand touring, so you could take some bags with you like on a road trip. And in this car, it even gets bigger. You can open up this cargo cover, you can see there's more space under here, and there's a little plaque displayed in this spot with all of this car's options. It shows this car's assembly number and then all of the different options and features that it has, personalized specifically to this car, which is a pretty cool look. And the panel that plaque is printed on can be lifted up so you have even more storage. Now you've united the rear cargo storage with the front cargo storage for specifically larger items. And this whole assembly with the cargo covers can just be removed completely if you want to store really big stuff in this car, although I suspect most people will never really want to do that. But in theory, you could. Now, also back here, a couple of other important items. Number one, you can see there's a little plastic panel off on the right side with a fuel pump on it. You're thinking, what is that? Well, under that little plastic piece hides a manual cable that you can use to open up the fuel door in case the electronic fuel door popper fails. This is something Ferrari has put in the trunk of their V12 models for a while, and you can see they're still doing that, a little backup fuel door release. Also, something Ferrari has done for a a while. If you open up the floor, lift it up, you can see there is a toolkit included with this car, complete with Ferrari branded gloves and a screwdriver. It's probably not really necessary in the modern era where you can't do much self-repair and fixing on these cars anymore, but Ferrari still includes a toolkit just like they did in the old days in case you want to attempt a roadside repair in your $600,000 12 Cilindri. And on the subject of $600,000, back here I have the window sticker for this car. Now, the starting price is right around $470,000. You can see $461 plus about $8,000 in delivery and prep costs. But this particular car is equipped to a total sticker price of around $612,000, thanks to an unbelievable 140 grand in options. In fact, there are so many options on this car that at some point the window sticker just gives up and it says other options, and they cost $70,000. There's so much stuff in this car they can't list it all, and the stuff they can't list adds up to 70 grand. That's how many options and how much customization you can do to personalize your Ferrari exactly like you want it. But a $612,000 sticker price is absolutely crazy money. Huge, massive, and remember, this is the coupe. There's a convertible version that's even more expensive, and I can imagine some of these might be knocking on the door of $700,000 when fully equipped. Huge money, but for a very special car. And if you're wondering, is it worth it? Well, let's go find out. Time to get behind the wheel of the 12 Cilindri and see how it drives. All right, driving the 12 Cilindri, the 12-cylinder, the 12C. This should be exciting. Ferrari in recent years has made a lot of different new and interesting products. A lot of stuff has changed, but this concept of like the two-seater V12 sports car goes way, 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 way back. And this is the latest in the lineage. And I gotta be honest, I haven't disliked a single one of their previous 12-cylinder two-seater sports cars, from the Testarossa to the Daytona to the Boxer to, I mean, they've all been special. The previous cars, there was some criticism that they had just gotten too powerful, too fast. And so now this car is here and it's even more powerful. Man, that powertrain is just, oh, it's the greatest engine that has ever lived. That's not true, but it's up there. It is one of the greatest engines that have ever lived. It is so smooth. You know, this engine in the Enzo, I drove it in the MC12 when it first came out, this engine, and it was really cool then. It was a great and surprisingly eager powertrain. A lot of times these bigger engines, they don't have the eagerness of a smaller, kind of tighter, you know, revvy thing, but this one does. Over the years, it has also been refined. It is linear. It is just so excellent. It produces an enormous amount of power, great torque, effortless power, but it still has drama. Like a Bentley W12 has effortless power. This also does, but you still get a great engine sound and you still get a great revability that you don't get in the Bentley. Oh, man, this car. Ah, that powertrain is so good, and those shifts are so quick. Oh, man. This car is just so over-the-top excellent. And it's gotten to be so unbelievably expensive compared to where you look not that long ago at 599, at 575, 15, 20 years ago, what those cars cost. This thing has gotten to be crazy expensive. But when you think about the level of performance, I mean, you start to think to yourself, you can get lulled into sitting here thinking, you know, maybe it makes some sense. Maybe I understand. All right, I'm gonna roll onto it here, get a little throttle going. It is so exceptionally fast. This car is faster than any possible circumstance could allow it to be rational. Like, there's no way you could ever use that performance and but it's there. So you can have any level of performance you want. Insane, irrational, crazy, or just like fast enough to pass basically everybody, which are two different levels of performance in this car. You can pass everybody and still be keeping it rational because there is so much more extra performance on top of that. Now, one other thing that I'm noticing driving this car, I'm really surprised at just how athletic it feels. The two-seater V12 car has never been Ferrari's athlete. That has always been the mid-engine, V8 and now six-cylinder car, the 296, the 430, the 458, etc. Those cars, the F8. But this one just feels so incredibly athletic. Now, the V12 cars have always been pretty good at this, but they've always kind of ceded a little bit of the athleticism to their smaller mid-engine brethren. I don't know. In this case, this car is just so unbelievably planted and quick steering. Just incredibly precise and fast. Ferrari charges a lot of money, but the cars have gotten to a point where they are just so exceptionally, brilliantly, perfectly good. It's unbelievable. It just has this unbelievable immediacy to it that Ferrari had kind of not really put in some of the previous V12 two-seaters, and now this car just, it makes no excuses. Like, it is the ultimate sports car and the ultimate V12 front-engine car. It also is really not that bad of a ride. Like, it's pretty nice in here. This is a pretty nice car. It's kind of luxurious, it's kind of comfortable. Obviously, the interior is loaded with tech, as I've discussed and shown you. Even at the price point, this is an exceptional car, like truly fast. The direction changing is incredible. The steering precision is unbelievable, but also the car's handling is absolutely amazing. It handles completely flat, unbelievably predictable, tremendously quick to steer. It drives like a mid-engine supercar of the highest order, and yet it's this relatively large front-engine V12. Certainly one of the greatest driving sports cars I have ever driven from a pure performance standpoint. I still find more enjoyment out of cars like my Carrera GT, where you have a manual transmission, where you have a little bit more of kind of the old charm, where you hear the engine noise more, etc. But from a pure performance, if you're just going after like what is the fastest, most incredibly well executed speed car that has ever existed, this car makes an incredibly strong case for itself. And so that's the Ferrari 12Cilindri, the 12-cylinder. This car is extremely expensive, but that's how Ferrari rolls these days. You gotta pay up if you want to own some of the most amazing cars on the planet, and this is certainly that. And now it's time to give this car a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 73 out of 100, which puts the 12Cilindri at the very top of this list of similar cars. I've been critical of this car's price point, and on this list I only gave it a 5 for value, which is below basically everything else here. But getting behind the wheel, it starts to make sense. What an absolutely monstrously, amazingly exciting car to drive. The handling of a mid-engine sports car with the power of the very best and the beauty of Ferrari's famous V12 lineage. This is an excellent car, though you do pay up significantly for that excellence.